Today I'm going to show you how to stretch and release all 4 major hip flexor muscles. What's going on, guys? Blake Bowman here, GuerrillaZen Fitness. In today's video I'm going to show you how to stretch not one but all of your major hip flexor muscles. Alright, with no further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so the first muscle I'm going to show you how to release is called the TFL, the tensor fascia lata. It's off at about 45 degrees on the side of your hip. It's right here. It's pretty superficial, close to the outside. Okay? Whenever we're trying to release a muscle, it's always best to foam roll it, do some self-massage on it first before you stretch it. So that's what we're going to do today. To foam roll that muscle, basically just put a foam roller down on the ground, kind of angle your hips so that they're not pointed directly down at the ground, but they're kind of off at an angle. And simply just roll back and forth on this muscle about 12 times, okay? It's not a very long muscle. It's just kind of isolated right about there, okay? So you don't need to be doing very big, broad, sweeps with your foam roller. Just tiny little back and forth motions, about 12 reps. All right, to stretch the TFL, it's pretty simple. You're gonna kind of get started in the classic kneeling hip flexor stretch like this, all right? And what you're going to do is you're going to tilt your pelvis backwards, squeeze the glute on this side, shift the hips forwards, okay? Keeping this glute here squeezed tight, okay? Keep it contracted the whole time. Now, to intensify this stretch directly on the TFL, what you want to do is raise this arm up, okay? Raise the arm up on the side of the body with the down knee, and then bend away from it, okay? So I don't know if you can see this right now, but I'm bending this way, okay, towards this wall. Keeping that glute fired. All right, keeping my core tight, bending that way. It's the bending this way that really kind of makes this stretch more specific to stretching the TFL instead of some of the other hip flexor muscles, okay? For this stretch, along with any of these other stretches, you want to hold it for at least 30 seconds to approximately a minute. All right, so the next hip flexor that we're going to go after is the rectus femoris. This is a muscle, it's actually a part of your quadriceps muscle group. It runs right down the center of the thigh, okay? Almost right down the exact center of the thigh. And it is a hip flexor muscle just like the TFL is. To foam roll that, it's pretty easy as well. You just basically put a foam roller down, position the foam roller directly on the center of the thigh, and then roll from about the top of your hip all the way down to just above the knee. For this, we want to do about 12 reps of this again, before we actually stretch it. All right, so stretching the rectus femoris is very similar to stretching the TFL, but we want to flex the knee a little bit more, okay? So what you're gonna need is a bench, a footrest like this, a couch, a chair, even a bed can work if it's low enough. You want something that's approximately the same height as a footrest. If you're at a gym, you can use a bench for this. To set up, you're basically going to set up in a very similar position to that more classic kneeling hip flexor stretch that I just showed you a second ago, but that back foot is going to be propped up on the surface. Right? In this case, I'm using a footrest. What you're going to do here, you're going to basically do the same thing. Squeeze the glute, squeeze the core, okay? But what I want you to do here is actually sink your butt back so that it almost comes in contact with the heel. If it can come into the contact with the heel, that's great, okay? By sinking back like this, maintaining this hip in an extended position, okay, with that knee flexed a ton, you're gonna feel this coming, a nice stretch coming right down the center of the thigh. A tremendous stretch, really. It's pretty intense, okay? For this, try to keep that glute contracted, and again, hold this for somewhere between 30 seconds and 1 minute. So these last 2 hip flexor muscles are more of one muscle, okay? They are the iliacus and the psoas. These are muscles that are deep inside of your hip, basically that blend together. They kind of blend together and attach on the femur. So they're oftentimes referred to as the iliopsoas, which is just a combination of iliacus and psoas. Some people think that they're separate muscles. They basically function together and they actually blend together, like I said, and attach on the femur. So we're just going to treat it as one muscle today, the iliopsoas. All right. Now, most of the fibers of this muscle are inaccessible to your body in terms of your capacity to do massage on them. Okay, you can't just foam roll this muscle. There are some tools that I've showed in previous videos that are helpful for this. Today I'm going to show you how to get into some of those iliacus and some of those psoas fibers using a light kettlebell. Okay, so with something like this, we're actually going to use the handle. Okay, so you're going to flip it upside down and kind of position the handle on the inside of that hip bone. So feel your hip bones, okay? Feel the top of the iliac crest. Go inside of that, okay? And basically, you know, what I want you to do with this kettlebell is kind of make tiny little circular motions in there on that iliacus. You can experiment with like placing it in different directions. Obviously be mindful of the structures underneath here. Your intestines and other organs, right? So we're not trying to do that over here. We're trying to really just get those muscles that line the inside of that hip bone, okay? With this, you know, spend about 30 seconds to a minute kind of just wiggling around. Don't force anything. Don't be too aggressive with it. There's not a whole lot that you can access fiber-wise when you're doing self-myofascial release on the iliopsoas because most of it is so deep, like I said. But it's still worth your while before you attempt to release or stretch it to do some myofascial release on the fibers that you can access. And this is a way to do that. Another way that you could do this is you can like put a tennis ball underneath a kettlebell, right? So you got a tennis ball here, you kind of smash the tennis ball down into the iliacus using the weight of the kettlebell to apply downwards pressure, okay? So that's another thing that you can experiment with. If you really want to, you know, try to massage this muscle and kind of pre-loosen it before we actually stretch it. When it comes to actually stretching this muscle, I've talked about this in other videos. I'll link to a video that I specifically made about the psoas somewhat recently. It doesn't respond very well to stretching, okay? You can place it under a stretch, but it doesn't really release like other muscles do when it is stretched. In fact, all of the stretches that we did today, if you're extending the hip, which all of these stretches that I showed you so far, they involve hip extension, that does place the psoas under a stretch. It elongates it, okay? But it's not going to do too much to release the iliopsoas in particular. One thing that I find really helpful for releasing the iliopsoas is what's called constructive rest position. And again, I've showed this in other videos, but today's video is all about hip flexors, so that's why we're going over this again. To do this, you can either put your feet up on the wall or you can rest them on something like a bench like this. I prefer to rest them because I find I can relax more, all right? While you're in this position though, what you want to be doing is just working on your diaphragmatic breathing, okay? You want to be recruiting that diaphragm, your main breathing muscle, to work by practicing belly breathing, okay? And allowing your hips to relax here. So breathing in through your nose, sending about 2/3 of that air downwards, or at least visualizing that, and having the last third be coming up here into your chest. Okay, if you want to guide that or have some feedback, put one hand on the chest, one hand on the abdomen, okay? And then, like I said, breathe through the nose, 2/3 of it, focus on sending it down low. The last 1/3, come up here. It'll look something like this. All right, that's a general idea. What does this do? Why am I showing you this? Well, this basically helps your body relax on a nervous system level and tell the psoas that it's okay to let go of its contraction and relax, okay? This muscle, the iliopsoas, it responds very poorly to emotional distress and things like that in a lot of people, and we oftentimes can hold tension in this muscle. Okay, and you know, a lot of the tension that's built up here is kind of associated with that fight or flight response, okay? And the best way that we can address that is by allowing the hip flex, you know, the iliopsoas to relax in this position while encouraging and telling the nervous system that it's okay to calm down and go into parasympathetic, which is the feed or breed branch of the autonomic nervous system. It's mutually exclusive to fight or flight mode. Okay? When fight or flight mode is turned on, your cortisol, your stress hormone is pumping, your muscles are going to be tight and contracted, digestion shuts down, creation of hormones shuts down, so on and so forth. When that mode is turned on, your feed or breathe is turned off, okay? To turn that on, we need to turn off fight or flight mode in order to facilitate that feed or breathe mode, which is called the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. And the best way to do that is through your breathing. In this position here, it's specifically helpful for releasing the PSOAS and allowing it to just let go of its contraction. To conclude this video, I want to just leave you with this last little nugget. All of the hip flexor muscles that we talked about today, the iliacus, the PSOAS, the rectus femoris, the TFL, they all become short and tight and dysfunctional when the glutes are weak, okay? So you can stretch and release all these muscles all you want, but as long as your glutes are weak, they're just gonna tighten right back up on you again the next day, okay? So it's critically important that you're strengthening your glutes in tandem with doing these stretches for the hip flexors if you actually want them to stay relaxed and you want to avoid them just building up tension again the next day, okay? I've talked about this many times. The best exercises to build up the glutes, okay, specifically the gluteus maximus, involve hip extension. Barbell hip bridges or hip thrusters are the best exercise to do. If you're just starting off, you might want to just do a classic hip bridge. Body weight laying on your back, thrusting the hips up like this, squeezing the glutes really hard at the top, and then coming back down. All right? That's a powerful exercise to do in tandem with any hip flexor stretching or hip opening that you're doing. That simply just makes it more effective. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have tight hip flexors, and that's why you found this video in the first place, then there is a high likelihood that you also have the other imbalances associated with something called anterior pelvic tilt, which is excessive forward tilting of the pelvis. Tight hip flexors are one of the things that causes that. Also, tight low back muscles, weak core muscles, weak glutes, okay? So if you have this postural misalignment, your hip flexors are gonna be really tight and uncomfortable all the time, as will your low back muscles. I actually have a free workout that teaches you how to correct this. It involves hip flexor stretching, but it also involves addressing those 3 other corners of the pelvis as well. It's a workout designed to help you fix anterior pelvic tilt. If you want to get access to that, it's free, it's on my website. All you need to do is open up the description down below, click the first link available, that will take you over to my website. As soon as you get there, I'll ask you for your email, and then I'll send you a copy of that workout within 5 minutes. If you're looking for another spot to get that free workout, you can click this button right up there. That will take you to the same spot on my website. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you go ahead and do that over here. If you want to see another video similar to today's video, check this out over here and leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you want me to make videos on in the future. I'm always eager for your feedback. Other than that, we'll see you next time.